On the last episode of Menace, the Ken story, I was crushed. Why did it have to be that way? Why did she have to leave? Why did she have to go back there? Why had I been so unfortunate to have seen the possibilities? Because that's what happened, and it tormented me. I saw us in that day. The circumstances were messed up, but I could see through it. If only our lives could align. I saw us together. I saw me coming home to her. I saw her being happy to see me. I saw her cooking for me and us talking over dinner. I could see that happening every day for the rest of my life. Yes, at 18. I hate that I saw it because it was right there, and then it wasn't. Any expectation that I had just faded away. I told Shalonda that she was always welcomed, and I gave her a key. Then I drove her to her bus stop. Before Shalonda got out of the car, I told her that I loved her and that I'd always be there for her. I promise, I said. I went home. A few hours later, the police came. Chapter 16, Jail. Narrated by Shandora Warren. Preface. The facts speak for themselves. He has a demonstrated history of violence, a general disregard for the rules, and a blatant disrespect for authority. His high school record is littered with instances of violent outbursts targeted towards other students and adults. He was sent to a juvenile facility for a drug charge where his time was extended due to a violent attack on another child. It is obvious that he is dangerous and impulsive. He's a high school dropout, has no job, and no family support. We have absolutely no confidence in Mr. Matthews' ability to stay out of trouble until his court date. We recommend no bond, Your Honor. In my mind, I thought, man, I know I ain't getting locked up again. But it was even worse that time. That time, I was grown. I wasn't going to juvie. I was going to jail. And the only thing that made it worse was everything that I messed up because of it. I had been hustling like crazy because I needed to pay for Ma's lawyer. Who was going to pay for that with me being locked up? Ma didn't stand a chance with the public defender. Then there was the house. I had been paying the bills. But what about the taxes and stuff? If me and Ma were both in jail, there was no one to take care of it. But mostly, there was Shalonda. She was left out there without me. She was left with the nigga that had put his hands on her. But the worst part was, he knew who I was. I couldn't imagine what he was going to do to her after that. That thought would have messed me up under any circumstances. But knowing it was my fault, that just ripped me open. And if things weren't already bad enough, I got processed and sent to general population. And who did I run into? That nigga Pops. Of all people. Pops had been locked up since July, right after my birthday. Him and Ma were both still waiting to go to court. He was happy to see me, even under the circumstances. But I ain't want to be nowhere near that nigga. Fortunately, Rod was prepared that time. The first time I got locked up, he was convinced that I was going to get a slap on the wrist. He knew it was more serious that time, so he hooked me up with a lawyer. The unfortunate thing about that was, we had to talk about it. Rob came to see me, and I did not want to have that conversation. He said, "Alright, look, LaMan, I ain't gonna sugarcoat this. You in some deep stuff. What I don't understand is how you ain't learned nothing. All this time you've been around, and you ain't realized that it was other ways around that. Why you ain't come to us? You know Mike and Tommy could have handled it. You wouldn't have had to worry about this, and she wouldn't have had to worry about him. Ever. But look, right, you young, and y'all young boys still ain't learned how to stop jumping off the porch. I'ma take care of it, but you gonna have to pull a little bit of time. I got you a good lawyer. He gonna get the trial pushed up to next month. All you gotta do is agree to everything. You're basically gonna get 6 months in anger management, which is a good deal, considering the fact that you basically detached that nigga's ribs. But look, right, ain't nothing free, man. And this got deep in my pockets. You gonna have to really step up when you get out. And I ain't never going through this with you no more. You gotta start thinking smarter. This your one, little man. Oh yeah, and I don't know what kind of hold this girl got on you, but I'm gonna advise you to use this time to get it out your system. If this ain't taught you nothing else, I hope you've learned that love ain't got no place in this life. Again, this is your one. Rob was always telling me that it was my one. It basically meant that it was the one time that I was going to get away with something. I often wonder if I got all of my ones because of his relationship with Kenny. I guess it really didn't matter though. One or not, Rob came through. 6 months was a slap on the wrist for what I did. For real, I thought I was going away. I could pick the bills back up at the house in 6 months. But Ma's court date will be coming up in 3 months. I really messed that up. I went to court 1 month later. I knew what Rob told me, and my lawyer assured me that everything would be fine. But there was still that one part of me that felt like something was going to go wrong. I felt like something unexpected was going to happen. And it did. I walked into that courtroom, and I was nervous. I got escorted in, and I immediately looked to my left when I entered. For some reason, I felt like Ma was supposed to be there. I mean, I knew she wouldn't be. How could she be? She was in jail. Everything in me knew that she would have been there under other circumstances. But Rob and Hot Boy were there. Of course, Shalonda's stepdad was there. And sitting directly in the front pew was Shalonda. Everything was already set up, so the court date was really a formality. I stepped up to the podium, and the judge basically gave me the rundown. I had decided to accept a guilty plea in exchange for 6 months in county jail and completion of a mandatory anger management program when I was released. I was so happy when I heard the judge say those words because I knew that I was locked into the deal. Nothing could be changed. Nothing could go wrong. I breathed a sigh of relief. But Shalonda's stepdad, he was hot. He was arguing with the judge about how he should have been informed that there was a deal on the table. Under some other set of circumstances, I'm pretty sure I would have laughed at him, but I had other business. I turned to Shalonda and told her that I loved her. I needed her to know that. I needed to lock her in for 6 months. 6 months. In my mind, I assumed that I wouldn't be able to see or talk to Shalonda. I mean, it ain't like her peoples were going to accept my calls or bring her to see me. So I had to make sure that she understood where we were before I left. I loved her, and I was going to love her when I got out. I just had to make sure that she was still going to be there. I saw the look on Rob's face, and I knew what he was thinking. You gotta be kidding me. I'm just glad that Hot Boy was there for the ride home, and not me. I started my official time in January. Since I had less than a year, I didn't get sent to prison. I was allowed to serve my time in the county jail. I was mad that I had to be in there, but the worst part was over. At the very least, I knew that the countdown was on. The crazy thing is, Pops was 2 cells down from me. In the beginning, I didn't have anything to say to him. I was mad that he had gotten Ma involved in all his mess. But a couple of weeks into my time, Pops pulled me aside and had a conversation with me. It went a little something like this. He said, "Look, Ken, I don't care what you think you're mad about, but you're still my son. You ain't about to walk around here like I ain't nobody to you. I'm not trying to turn you against your mama, but Trisha was digging her ditch long before that day. You just happened to be there that time. I hate how this all went down, but this is where we at now. I got a court date coming up, and I already know I'm going to prison, probably for a while. Can we at least be alright to then? Neither one of us knows where life is headed after that." I hated to admit it, but Pops was right. The police officer that I met with told me that Ma had been arrested for the same thing a month earlier, and she was alone that time. All things considered, I had to wonder if Ma had been truly innocent that time when they found crack in the glove compartment. And Pops was right about something else too. He was going to prison after his court date. It was entirely possible that I wouldn't be able to see Pops for a few years. With that in mind, I decided to let go of the ill feelings. Time wasn't on our side. Pops went to court in the beginning of March. He got sentenced to 5 years. It hit me like a ton of bricks, like someone had punched me in the stomach. 5 years. The crazy thing was, I didn't expect to feel that way. Me and Pops had mended fences while we were both in county, but I still expected him to be just out of sight, out of mind once he was gone. However, I found that I missed him. I got to know a different Pops while he was in jail, mostly because he had to be there. Pops was sober in there, so he wasn't looking stupid and making me mad. I got to see him interact with other people. He was actually pretty funny. He had a relationship with the older guys in there that reminded me of Mike and Tommy. They were always telling jokes and lies, as Rob would say. County jail felt different with him gone. It felt empty. I felt bad about the time that I had spent being mad with him when I first got there. That's time that we could have spent together. And it got worse. Ma went to court a week or so afterwards, and I found out that she got sentenced to 2 years. It could have been worse, and I knew that. But it could have been better, and I knew that too. I was very much aware that Ma's time would have been lessened if she'd had an actual lawyer to fight for her. But I messed that up when I got locked up. And because I knew that, I completely blamed myself. I got my time in December. Ma and Pops got their time in March. I felt like everything was getting worse by the day. Those were the times that I thought back to my last day with Shalonda. I kept reflecting back to the feeling that I had when I came home and she was cooking dinner. I just felt so good, and everything felt so right. I felt like I had messed up any opportunity for that to ever happen again. I had left her alone out there. In my mind, she was probably being mistreated and blaming me for it. She probably hated me, and I hated myself for that. Everything was going wrong, and I just knew the trend was continuing when one Sunday morning rolled around. An officer came into my cell. "Matthews, you got a visit." In my mind, I thought, a visit? Who would be visiting me? I hadn't had many visits since I gotten there. Rob came to visit when I first got locked up, but only to let me know that he was going to take care of my lawyer. He hadn't been back, and none of the other members of the crew had been to visit me either. I wasn't even mad about it like some other people may have been. I understood it. They weren't even trying to be hot like that. So when I was told that I had a visit that morning, I was at a complete loss about who it may have been. So I asked, "Who is it?" The officer flipped through a couple of pieces of paper before responding. "Sharon Russell." My heart fell all the way to the floor. Sharon? Why would she be visiting me? There was only one reason that I could come up with, and I didn't want to face that. Sharon was a friend of Shalonda's. Well, she was a little bit older, but they had gotten close because Sharon did Shalonda's hair. Shalonda was very open about the fact that Sharon was the only person that she felt she could depend on. Well, other than me. In my mind, Sharon could only have been there for one reason. She was there on Shalonda's behalf, and that couldn't be a good thing. If Shalonda still wanted to be with me, we could just carry on when I got home. If she sent Sharon, it was because she needed to say something that couldn't wait. In my mind, Sharon had done Shalonda's hair the day before, and Sharon asked her to visit and break up with me on her behalf. The thought of that really bothered me. But what was I going to do? Not come out? I was just going to hear it. But I already knew that I'd try to change Shalonda's mind when I got home. I got dressed and prepared to face the music. But when I walked into that visitation area, it was nothing like I thought. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I walked up to booth number 7 and took a seat. Seated on the other side of the glass was her, Shalonda. Man, she looked so good. I couldn't pick up that phone fast enough. I couldn't believe she was actually there. Come to find out, Shalonda had used Sharon's ID because she wasn't old enough to visit. It turned out that a lot had changed for Shalonda. We didn't really get into the specifics, but she told me that something happened and she moved out of her parents' house. She was living with Sharon. Listen, I had been all the way down while I was in jail. The whole time, I was constantly thinking about everything that I had messed up. I failed Ma, and that's why she got 2 years. I spent so much time being mad with Pops, and I regretted that when he got sent to prison. But a part of me understood that they had dug their own ditches. My biggest regret was the fact that I had left Shalonda out there with a stepdad that liked to put his hands on her. I was sick the entire time, thinking about what he was probably doing to her. But she was out. I wasn't going to make her talk about what led up to that. She was out, and that was enough for me. It's crazy because Shalonda didn't understand her power. She didn't understand who she was to me. Shalonda told me that she was afraid that I wouldn't want to be with her when she came home. She thought I'd blame her for me getting locked up. How? After everything that I had gone through to protect her, how could I just let her go? But I understood not knowing where you stand with someone. I had similar concerns. But seeing her that first time made them all go away. We were back. We were right back. That visit was far too short, but Shalonda promised me that she'd be back the next week. At the end of the visit, I made sure to lock Shalonda in. I looked into her eyes and quoted a line from her favorite song, Where Do Broken Hearts Go by Whitney Houston. I said, I look in your eyes and I know that you still care for me. She smiled in the shy but sweet way that she always did and said, You know I do. Shalonda was a sucker for that kind of stuff. She was there, but I had to make sure that she would remain. She was out of her parents' house, so she had a little more freedom. I couldn't take the chance of Shalonda getting distracted by someone else before I made it home. But if so, that could be managed. The biggest thing was she was away from her stepdad. That made the rest of the time that I had much easier. Shalonda visited me every single Sunday from March until I was released in July. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to purchase books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and some in hardback formats. Please like and share and follow this podcast. And be sure to share it with your friends, families, and frenemies because all relationships matter, even the toxic ones. Thanks so much for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome.